warned them. Yes, and what you need to do is open the PDF, not the link. In the email you got Friday, open the PDF instead of the link.
Okay, you don't send it over to those?
Well, once you open it in the PDF, then you send it over to books.
I mean, book.
Yeah. It is 6 o'clock, August 15th, 2023. Welcome to the City of Commerce regular City Council meeting. Tonight we have the honor of having Pastor James Mansfield of Victory Baptist Church in Commerce lead us in our invocation. Victory Baptist Church is located at 2810 Farmers Market Road 3218, or as we know, Bus Barn Highway, by Commerce Elementary. Services at the church are Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. and Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. following Sunday school at 10 a.m. Pastor James Mansfield is a native of England and later moved to the States to pursue full-time work as a pastor. Pastor Mansfield has been a pastor at the church since 2016 when he reopened the church after it had been closed for 5 years following the death of the previous pastor. The pastor and his wife, Andrea, have been married for 19 years and have 7 sons. Pastor Mansfield, please come to the podium and lead us in tonight's invocation.
Thank you for inviting me this evening. It's an honor to be here. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to meet this evening and discuss the events and the issues of our community. And we do look for your guiding hand in these matters. We pray for wisdom for these counselors. And Lord, we know when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. And so, Lord, we do pray for your Holy Spirit to minister to our hearts as we look for wisdom, as we look for the right decisions that will affect our spouses and our children and future generations. We pray you'd give us the wisdom as we care for our finances. And Lord, as we think of the things that are morally right and proper. And we thank you, Lord, for the shed blood of Jesus Christ, which was shed for us, that we might have acceptance of salvation through Christ and forgiveness of sins through the work of the cross. Lord, bless tonight's service, and we'll thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Coming tonight to provide our Pledge of Allegiance, it will be brought to you tonight from the Commerce Middle School cheerleading team, accompanied by the team's coach, Miss Whitney Vaught. Coach Vaught cheered throughout grade school, college, and was on the UCA and NCA staff. Coach Vaught has taught in Commerce for 8 years now, serving 6 years as the Commerce Middle School's cheer coach. She enjoys watching her girls learn, grow, and succeed. Coach Vaught, welcome. Please take a moment and introduce your team to the audience tonight. Pull her down. There you go.
Is it up? I don't know. Okay, so over here are my 8th grade cheerleaders. First off is Cadence Norris, Danica Kinchin, Breezelyn Barton, Audrina Aldridge, Aaliyah Villavazzo, and Alexa Garcia. On this side are my 7th grade cheerleaders. They are Jalen Emery, Tessa Alderman, Naomi Patchcody, Tony Burrell, Isabella Holloway, Soraya Kelly, and Rihanna Wilson.
Thank you, ladies. If you would lead us in the pledge, please. Thank you very much, ladies. Appreciate you coming out tonight. give them just a minute. All right, council, the next item we have on the agenda is item number 4, the consent agenda. Please take a moment and look at the consent agenda. Are there any questions concerning the consent agenda? There being none, may I have a motion, please?
Move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 5 is presentation to the City Council by members of the public. This is to be conducted as close to 6:05 as possible. It is a 3-minute limit per person. With that being said, I have 2 cards here. Let me make the presenters aware that the response to public comments is limited to a statement of fact or policy, direction to take up the issue with a city staff member, or an offer to place the item on a future consent agenda. Our city manager will address any comments that are brought forward tonight, but the council is not allowed to respond. So, first coming tonight is Frank Higgins. Mr. Higgins, please come forward and provide your address.
2 months ago, you talked about putting some speed humps out on North Neal, which I praised that highly, because North Neal does need speed humps, doesn't need signs. They have signs out there right now that people are running. They're not paying any attention to the signs we have now. They run both of the stop signs that are out there right now. 4th Street and North Neal, they come through that on a daily basis, every day, twice a day, when they go to work, when they get off work out there. They fly down North Neal. They still fly down North Neal. They don't pay attention to the speed limit signs we have there. They don't pay attention to the stop signs. They don't pay attention to the truck use Highway 71 signs. No more signs is just some more things that they're going to ignore. Those people have to be forced. They have to be forced to do something. Speed humps was one of the forces to do it. The other is the chief putting a man out there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, which that can't happen. I understand that. Police have other places to go, other places to do. I understand that. But this was part of a problem that could be, this was part of a solution to a problem on North Neal. North Neal is a unique street that needs to be treated as a unique street, not a city street. It needs to be treated as a residential street where families live. I don't understand. You spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to make cats and dogs safe, but you won't spend a couple of $1,000s to make humans safe in a neighborhood that needs speed humps. Signs are just going to be ignored, just like the ones we have there now. The postman that delivers out there wanted me to bring this up to you. He's almost been T-boned 3 times from the people running the stop signs at North Neal and 4th Street, from those people getting off work out there. And Chief, you can get with the post office, find out who the guy is, and he will tell you exactly what this is. He can't come because he works late in the evenings when he's delivering mail. But you can get with him and you'll find out exactly what I'm telling you is the truth. We need speed humps out there. Signs are not going to do it. Signs will not do it. Somebody said that speed humps are going to cost $2,000. I found a place online that will sell them to us for $869 a piece if we buy one. If we buy 5 or more, they're less than $800 a piece. That's 15 feet long, 12 inches wide, and 3 inches tall. That would be a heck of an expense that I think would be great to ensure the safety of the children, the adults, and the property on North Neal. If we're not going to have, there's a lot of police action out there that come out there, and I don't mean action, but there's a lot of police out there that do come out there and they do patrol. A lot more than there has been in the last 10 years have been out there. I see police come out there, but patrolling once or twice a day is not going to solve the issue out there on North Neal. It is a unique neighborhood because of where it's located. I understand. But I also understand I want my neighborhood safe. That's all I got to say about this. I don't know if Mr. Ford has anything or not.
I just want to add, I mean, I know a few months ago, the police department was shorthanded, but I do believe that one of the resolutions to this is enforcement of the signs, and the only people that can do that is the police officers, but they have to be there at a designated time. We've also noticed the 10 minutes between trailers coming out. That's not being done. If some of these, here's my suggestion. Somebody from the city council or the police chief need to go out to that manufacturer and give them a warning. Then they're warned. And then when you stop somebody, you write them a ticket. Don't warn them, write them a ticket because they've been warned. We're not getting any cooperation from Legacy, and right now, I don't feel we're getting any cooperation from our city council. This is a very unique street because we have a business at the end, but nobody's enforcing it. And then when we try to say something to a driver, we get ignored, or they call the police and then they're ready to arrest somebody instead of enforcing the laws. That's what laws are for. And I would appreciate it that the city council would listen to us, because right now we feel like we're, falling on deaf ears. We had one meeting, and 3 to 5 years before we can get TxDOT involved, I guess it's going to sweep it under the rug. We're not going away. So we would appreciate it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Thank you, Mr. Higgins. The next card I have is from Jill Dutton. Jill Dutton is candidate for House District 2 from Van Sant County. Ms. Dutton.
Good evening. And first of all, I'd really like to say just thank you for serving as city council members. You are truly the heart of commerce, and you're true servant leaders. I'm a former school board member from Van Sant County. So I served on the school board there for 10 years, and one of the reasons that I've been inspired to run is because of my time on that school board, of understanding the mandates, the unfunded mandates, and the laws and legislation that are passed down to schools and to counties and to cities, and the struggles that each of those government entities struggle with from the legislature. And so I was inspired to run for that reason. Also, I did just want to mention that when we said the Texas Pledge, I was reminded that our former state representative, Dan Flynn, before the previous state representative, he was part of writing that Texas Pledge. And I'm very proud of that because I supported him through his elections. I've supported other legislators or other people that have run for Senate, for Congress, so I'm no stranger to the political field, to running races, to block walking, to fundraising. So I really my intention was to come here tonight and to introduce myself, and if any of you would like to sit down and visit, I would love to make an appointment and visit with you about the issues. The three main issues that I see that our counties are faced with, that Texas is faced with, is the open borders with property tax relief, and then preparing our counties for the influx coming from the cities, from the urban sprawl that's coming our way, that we need to be prepared for. So I would love to visit with any of you at any time, and I'm sure the mayor will have a way to get in touch with me if any of you would like to reach out and make an appointment. So I know you can't ask questions or speak, so I'll just end it right here, and thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Dutton. We appreciate you being here tonight. City Manager, Mr. Lisenby, any comments?
Ms. Dutton, again, thank you for joining us tonight. I'll briefly say the same thing that I've said to other candidates that have joined us that are running. I agree, there are many issues facing Texas, but the one that we've mentioned to everyone that has come through to visit with us is the trend in Austin to take away local control. And the state of Texas doesn't want Washington, D.C. telling us how to run our state. We tend to agree, but then Austin wants to tell us how to run our communities. And so it's kind of a double standard. And they've been aggressively working to take away our community's right to control their own destiny. And we feel fairly strongly about that. And so we just ask you to be mindful of that as you run your campaign, and should you get elected, we thank you for representing us well. Thank you. Thanks. So,
Anything else? Okay. All right, the next item we have on the agenda is item number is council comments. So for council comments, I first would like to say thank you to the fire department for their recent battle, if you will. And so I've asked Mr. Henry, Councilman Henry, to read a write-up for the council tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Yesterday, August 14th, the Commerce Fire Department responded to a structure fire off Private Road 4402 around 11 a.m. Commerce Fire took Engine 4, the Quint, Brush 1 truck, a command vehicle, 4 on-shift firefighters, and Chief Bassam. Firefighters on shift included Captain Jeremy Littlefield, Lieutenant Jeff Rich, and firefighters Dylan Thomas and Christian Alvaro. Additionally, four more Commerce firefighters, Jimmy Heffrich, Colton Broski, Josh Hardy, and Lieutenant Derek Vickery responded to the call, even though they were not on shift. When Commerce Fire Department arrived on scene, the garage was fully engulfed and the fire had spread to the residence. Upon arrival, teams made entry to the residence and did a search and found no occupant or animals inside the residence. Commerce Fire Department staff spent about 5 hours in over 100-degree weather fighting the fire. Firefighters were later treated for dehydration, heat exhaustion, and fatigue at the local ER. Thank you, Chief Bassam and Commerce Fire Department staff, for your commitment, bravery, and dedication to protecting life and property in the City of Commerce.
Wait. Are there any other comments from the council this evening? Councilman Muller.
I just have one comment, is that I would like for everybody to be aware of the National Night Out that will be coming up in October. And when it gets to the end of our presentations, when we do about our community events, I'd like for Chief Belize, if he would please talk about it, because it's a great opportunity for all of our citizens to be a part of.
Okay. Councilman Thompson. Comments? Councilman Ayers. All right, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is item number 7, discussion related to proposed tax rate in the FY 2024 budget. Mr. Lisenby, City Manager.
Mayor, Council, during our August budget workshop, we presented to you the proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year, which begins in October. That proposed budget included a recap of what we were projecting the tax rates to be based on information that had been given to us by the state and by the Hunt County Appraisal District. After the conclusion of that workshop, we were provided with the tax rate worksheet that is required. The Appraisal District is required to provide us with information in this worksheet that is part of the tax rate calculation. That worksheet was not provided to us in advance of our workshop, and we received that worksheet after the conclusion of our workshop. And so there's some numbers that have changed since the date of that workshop, and so we wanted to publicly present the change in what those numbers are and what impact it has on the proposed budget as it has been presented to the community. I don't want to go into great length trying to explain the tax rate calculation process. It changes every legislative session, and it doesn't get easier to understand. It gets a little more complex. But there are a couple of important tax rates that taxpayers need to be aware of in state legislation. One of those is the no new revenue rate. And so that is a calculation that looks at the maintenance and operation revenue that was generated in the last year's or the current year's budget, and what is the new tax rate that generates that exact same dollar amount of maintenance and operation revenue. And so the no new revenue rate is a tax rate that generates last year's revenue. Then there is the voter approval rate that is a 3.5% increase to that revenue. So last year's maintenance and operations revenue can increase up to 3.5%, and anything over that requires an election. Then there is what's called the de minimis rate. And so the de minimis rate is for communities under 30,000 population. What is the rate necessary to generate an additional $500,000 of revenue over the previous year? And so the three numbers that you typically look at are the no new revenue rate, the voter approval rate, and the de minimis rate if you're under 30,000 population. Now, within the de minimis rate process, if a local city adopts the de minimis rate and it is more than 8% increase in revenue, the citizens can petition for an election to support that rate or to roll it back. And so you kind of have a fourth rate is the de minimis that is 8% or greater. And so when we looked at our tax rate options based on the information we had at the worksheet, at the workshop, we presented that we could hold the tax rate constant at 0.769326 per $100 evaluation. And that is the de minimis 8% rate that we can adopt without a petition for election. That number has changed based on the worksheet that was given. And so if I may just briefly, when they calculate what the no new revenue rate, the voter approval rate, and the de minimis rate, they look at last year's valuations. Well, the appraisal district has disclosed to us that in last year's certified valuations, they withheld $49 million of value that was under contestation. And that, it was actually a bigger number, and some people won their appeal, some people lost their appeal. But there's $49 million of value on our tax roll that was taken off of the tax roll because of appeal, and I guess they lost the appeal, and so they've put it back into the tax roll. Well, they can't disclose to us what those numbers are, and so that changes last year's certified value, and as a result, changes all of the rates that we presented. And so, long story short, the 8% de minimis rate that can be adopted for cities under 30,000 for us is 0.798909. That is a potential tax rate increase from 0.769 to 0.798. And so what we've done is in the proposed budget and in the discussions we're having tonight is if the council wants to adopt that 79-cent rate instead of the existing 76-cent rate, that generates an additional $180,000 of revenue to the general fund above what the current tax rate does. And so when we presented the budget as proposed to the council, we discussed that when you look at salaries and wages for our employees, and as a service organization, the vast majority of our budget is tied up in people. And so the people that provide these services to our community have historically been underpaid, and that's not been a secret to anybody in this community because of the economic conditions of our community. And so we've been working over the past several years to move all of our employees into a market wage that is comparable to what they can make in our region. We're not talking about the Metroplex, we're talking about our region. For similar jobs, what could they be making in other communities of our size? And so we want them to be within that range so that we can retain the good employees that provide good services to our community. And so the proposed budget with the tax rate staying the same as last year allowed for a 1.5% salary increase to all of our employees. A 1.5% salary increase does not keep up with inflation, and it results in some of our employees moving to the bottom or falling out of that market wage. And so if we adopt the 79-cent rate, which is the new number under this current worksheet, what we're proposing with that $180,000 is to, one, give 3% raises to all of our staff rather than 1.5%. So that's an additional 1.5% salary than what we presented in the workshop. And the second is to rewrite our certification pay program. During this last year, we put a committee of employees from across the organization together to review our certification pay program. And so, Mayor and Council, we gave each one of you a worksheet. And so it is an industry practice. Most cities that we've contacted, employees can go get advanced education, they can take advanced training, they can pass certification tests, and they get certifications that demonstrate increased knowledge, increased skill in how they do their job. Currently, the certification program for the City of Commerce is if you take the time, go to school, get the certification, you get an extra $25 a month. In today's economy, an extra $25 a month will let you go to the new Starbucks that just opened maybe twice. And so we've found that employees just really aren't motivated to put in the time and effort to go acquire these additional certifications. And so the committee that reviewed this program made some recommendations to improve the certification pay so that it adds incentive for staff to get those advanced certifications to improve the level of skill and knowledge they have and how they serve the community. But we were not able to put that in the budget because of what's going on with our property values and the tax rolls. And so they put a lot of work into creating a recommendation, and we didn't put it in the budget so that the budget would be balanced. The 79-cent rate and that extra dollars that it puts on the table allows us to put that certification pay program. And so what we're proposing is that for each certification that you acquire, you get an additional $100 a month, and you can stack that 5 times. And so for firefighters, there's a number of specialized certifications they can get that improves their skill and ability to serve our community. They can go get up to 5 certifications now, and that would increase their pay by $500 a month. That is a substantial move that would then, we feel, motivate staff to go get these certifications and also help us recruit and retain employees. And so the budget as it has been proposed and presented to the community is with a tax rate of 0.798909, which is a different number than we discussed in the worksheet. And that includes additionally 3% across the board raises for staff and rewriting our certification pay program. And so we wanted to publicly disclose what is in this proposed budget that wasn't discussed during the workshop because we want to remain fully transparent and we didn't want to appear that we were presenting one thing in a public workshop and then doing something different behind the scenes. We want full disclosure on what staff is recommending and what we're writing into the proposed budget. I'll remind council and the community that at this point it is still proposed. There is still plenty of time to discuss, to debate, to talk about this proposed budget, to talk about this proposed tax rate. Final adoption happens in September. And so we still have time to engage and discuss in these matters with the public, and we welcome those conversations. And so, Mayor, Council, Ms. Jamie and I are ready to, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those questions and then move on to the next agenda item, which is adoption of a proposed tax rate.
So I do have 2 requests, and
Okay.
I apologize now for asking without giving you a heads up.
Sure.
I would appreciate it if you would remind us, walk us down if you would, the 2022 tax rate, the 23 tax rate, and now the proposed 2024, so we can see how it's gone, how it's changed.
Sure. For probably 10 years, the tax rate was 82 cents per $100 of valuation. In last year's budget, we were able to reduce that tax rate from 82 cents down to the 0.769326 that it is currently at today. The rate we're proposing at 798909 is still lower than the 82 cents that it previously was for over a decade.
Okay. My other request is that you mentioned the de minimis rate being used to generate $500,000 for cities of 30,000 population or less.
Correct.
If you can remember and recite to us, there were some examples that you gave of surrounding communities on the tax difference that it cost Commerce versus some of those other communities to generate that $500,000.
Sure. In the city of Greenville, based on their certified tax values, if they, again, I'm pulling from memory, but for them to generate an additional $500,000 of revenue, it takes 2 cents on their tax rate. For us, a penny on our tax rate generates about $45,000. And so to get that additional full $500,000, our total tax rate would be 84 cents. And so it takes a significantly higher rate to generate the same revenue as other communities around us. And so as an example, in Commerce, the total value of the property within our city limits is about $1.5 billion of value. However, 900 million of that is owned by the state of Texas and is exempt from taxes. And so we provide all of the municipal services to a community of 13 to 14,000 people with a certified tax roll, a net tax roll of about $500 million. Other communities our size and population that provide the same services that we do have a certified net tax value of $1.2 to $1.5 billion. And so their tax rates are lower, but they generate more revenue because they provide services at a higher level, even though their populations are the same. And so we have a challenge raising the level of the quality of service that we provide to our community without impacting our taxpayers because of the depressed certified values that we have to work with. Does that answer your question, Mayor?
It does. Thank you
Okay.
very much. I appreciate that. Are there any other questions for Mr. Lisenby or Ms. Campbell?
Ms. Campbell, I'm asking this question to have it on the record more than anything else. All right, so we're talking about the certification program or the stipends. And so if we choose to do this year, do we have the ability to keep this going for the following years? So I'd like to hear your answer on that.
So, so for the certification pay, the one thing that I would say is that looking at our M&O rate, okay? If we're looking at our M&O rate, and if the council decides to not go at the 8% rate, and the decision is made to go at the lower rate, the first thing I'll say is that it's not even at the voter approval rate. It's at like 2.6% increase. And so if that's the case, then next year your starting point is even lower. And so to get that momentum back is going to be even more difficult. If we were going to start this and get this started, we would be able to continue it because we have that momentum started. Having something like this certification pay, the certification pay is not just $100 a month. What it is it's built into their hourly rate because of fair labor standards says that we have to include it in their overtime rate. And so this is something that we've already kind of started by having it in there at $25, you know. And so as people leave, sometimes they leave with their certifications. Sometimes new people come in with new certifications. I do not find it difficult for us to continue this path because we would be able to continue this path with our M&O. And because we get it from our maintenance and operations, and because we're starting that M&O at this level, our M&O won't all of a sudden just drop out. If we were going to adopt a rate that's much lower and that's lower than the voter approval, it would be so hard to get that momentum back.
Okay,
That
thank you.
answers your question.
And the second question is, we'll have something in place to make sure that the certifications are being kept up, so
So So we already have something in place already. HR, they already monitor everybody's to make sure, because we already we already have a certification policy. And so that's something that they monitor already. I think we're already having a plan, if this goes through, to do an audit of the certifications, because we've gone through and decided that we were going to expand some, remove some, we really just kind of went through and said, this one works, this one doesn't work, let's add this one. So I think we're gonna go through and do a full audit anyway. But it's something that's already part of our policy.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Lisenby or Ms. Campbell?
One thing I will make note of is this does not affect your debt rate. The debt rate is set already based on our outstanding debt and new debt that you guys are going out for the upcoming year and upcoming CIP. This only affects on the M&O side.
Okay, there being no questions, council, there's no action for us on item 7. Item 8, closely related to that, discussion and possible action on a resolution by the Commerce City Council approving the maximum proposed property tax rate, which is utilized in the creation of the FY 2024 budget. Ms. Campbell.
Before I speak about this, there was one thing that was very important that I wanted to state on that. The actual worksheet, the tax rate worksheet, is available for every citizen to view, and it's available in 2 places. It's available online here at hunt.countytaxrates.com. Every property owner should have gotten a postcard in the mail. Not only is our tax rate sheet available here, but all of our tax rates are posted. Our hearings are posted here. Once we decide what our proposed tax rate is, probably tomorrow morning, I'll update it. And then once you adopt a tax rate, it's available. It's also available for citizens to make comments about how they feel about the tax rate. So it's available here, and then it's also available in our online budget. I have a link to the PDF. So it's available for all citizens to go on and view. You can actually view your individual property, and you can view the city as a whole. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that it's available, it's transparent, it's out there. And it's actually like that for every county. No, not just Hunt County, but every county in the state of Texas has this. Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Get that out. So moving on to the actual property tax rate. So the property tax rate that we are proposing is 0.798909 for FY 2024. This is comprised of a debt rate of 0.231870 and an M&O rate of 0.57039, which is an increase of almost 8%, not quite 8%. And so this is the property tax rate that we are proposing to council. And again, this is just going to be the ceiling. So I can't come back in a month and say, just kidding, we want to go higher. This will be the ceiling. This is not you adopting the tax rate. This is just a roll call vote on yay or nay if you approve that this will be our proposed tax rate. Any questions?
Are there any questions from the council? There being none, may I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the maximum property tax rate of 0.798909 for FY '24, which is comprised of the debt rate of 0.231870 and M&O rate of 0.567039.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, as Ms. Campbell mentioned, this is a roll call vote, so I will call you by name for your vote. Councilman Henry.
Yay.
Councilman Muller.
Yay.
Councilman Thompson.
Yeah.
Councilman Ayers.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 9, discussion and possible action on a resolution by the City of Commerce, Texas, finding that Encore Electric Delivery Company, LLC's application to amend its distribution cost recovery factor and update generation riders committee of cities served, to increase distribution rates within the city should be denied. Authorizing participation with the steering committee of cities served by Encore, authorizing hiring of legal counsel, finding that the city's reasonable rate case expenses shall be reimbursed by the company, finding that the meeting at which this resolution was passed is open to the public as required by law, requiring notice of this resolution to the company and legal counsel. Mr. Lisenby, City Manager.
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to present this tonight. I'll briefly cover the context of what's going on. In the realm of public utilities, there are those portions of public utilities that are deregulated. For example, your retail electric provider. Customers can choose from a large list of providers that they can buy the electricity from. However, the distribution system of that electricity is generally a local monopoly, because you typically don't want multiple companies running poles and wires throughout a community. It's just not economically efficient to have that much public infrastructure. And so as an example, for our public water utility, we have water lines buried all around town, and we don't have a program where somebody else can move in and start digging up our streets and putting their water lines in. It's not economically efficient. And so those portions of the public utilities, to some degree, operate as a monopoly. And so the protection for the public against that monopoly power is regulation by either the local government or by the state government. And electric utilities are regulated by the Public Utility Council, or the PUC. And so when the distribution companies want to raise their rates, it has to go before a hearing process with the PUC. And cities can either choose to independently represent themselves and go participate in those hearings, or many cities will band together and create interlocal groups where cities work together to evaluate and challenge these rate cases. And so we are a member of the Steering Committee of Cities Served by Encore, or OCSC. And as such, whenever Encore submits a rate case where they want to increase their revenue, we have the option to approve or disapprove that rate within our city. Our jurisdiction comes because their lines are going through public right-of-way. And so they're using public streets, they're using public right-of-way in a for-profit venture. And so we have some jurisdiction on the rates they charge to our citizens because they're using our public right-of-way to conduct their business. And so the recommendation of our steering committee, and actually the recommendation of Encore, is that we deny the rate case so that it can then go through an administrative hearing process, and they will settle on some rate that all parties agree to. If we choose not to take action on this, then we are by default approving the rate they're proposing, and we may not benefit from whatever final rate is negotiated. And so staff is recommending approval of the resolution to deny Encore's request so that it can go through an administrative hearing process and be reviewed by experts much smarter than I. And so staff is recommending approval of this resolution.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lisenby? There being none, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we accept the resolution by the City of Commerce to deny the fund increase for the City of Commerce.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 10, discussion and possible action on a resolution approving the emergency construction agreement for the Sulphur River Emergency Bypass event, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents pertaining to the agreement and appropriating funds for this agreement. Mr. Lisenby, City Manager.
Mayor, Council, thank you again for the opportunity tonight. This project was one that we wish had not happened, but sometimes Mother Nature and events beyond our control don't give us what we want. But as a recap, last summer, the transmission line that brings treated water into the community from our treatment plant crosses the Sulphur River right along Highway 24 at the bridge at the river crossing. And last summer, that line developed a leak. We were aware of the water leak, and it was a 70-year-old steel water line that had been encased in concrete 70 years ago. And so as we started investigating the leak and trying to figure out what our options were to repair the leak, we discovered that any effort made to remove the concrete from the steel line would cause the line to further rupture and would completely blow out the water line. And that's the only water line we have bringing water into our community. And so we were not physically able to repair the leak as it presented itself in last summer. So we began an extensive process of working with engineers, finding contractors and professionals to design a new river crossing to just completely replace the infrastructure and build a new crossing. And so going through the design process, you can't go to Home Depot and buy that. And so we had to design the new river crossing. We had to find a contractor that was capable of installing, and we had to get the state to approve the design of the process. And that all took some time. And so we started construction in June to install the new river crossing. After we had already started construction of the new river crossing, the existing leak intensified and drained our distribution system. And so you'll recall at the very end of June, the city's water distribution system drained. We lost pressure. We ended up in a boil water notice. And all of this was at the end of June, right before the July 4th holiday. And so the contractor was already here. They were already on the ground working on our long-term solution to this problem. And we now had a short-term problem that we had to solve quickly. And so the mayor called, declared a state of emergency. We used that declaration as the authorization to go ahead and get the contractor to bring in the resources necessary to create an emergency bypass to stop the leak so that we could restore water to the community. They, within a day, brought their crews in and mobilized, and within 30 hours, they had fixed that leak, created the emergency bypass, and allowed us to restore highly reliable water delivery to the community. And so it was an exercise in emergency management. It was an exercise in patience. But at no point during that process, and because it's practically impossible, we didn't ask them for a quote first. We just told them to fix it. Because without those crews coming in to fix it, we potentially could have had a community with no water and no fire protection for weeks. And so now that the leak is finished, we have a price that has been put together by this emergency contractor. And so what I'm bringing to you tonight is council approval of the contract for the emergency bypass that has already been done and has already been concluded. And so I don't like, as a matter of policy or practice, to ask you to approve cost for things that have already been done. But emergency situations require emergency responses. And so the cost of that emergency bypass is $409,250. And that is a very steep price, and one for which we then went back to the contractor and asked them to provide us a little bit more detail, because they just gave us a bottom line price. And we said, we need to see some more detail in that number before we just write you a check. And so they have provided that level of detail. And so the bad news is it's $409,000. The good news is we still have federal dollars remaining that are available to be used for water infrastructure that is covering the cost of this emergency bypass. So we are not using local dollars and local funds to pay for this. We had federal dollars in hand that are eligible to be spent on this. And so we're asking for approval of the contract for the work that was already done and advising you that it is being paid for with federal dollars that are available for this type of expenditure, and we're not proposing to amend our budget or use local funds for this work. And so we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lisby? Thank you very much. There being none, may I have a motion, please?
I'm making a motion to approve the emergency construction contract and authorizing the city manager to execute all related documents.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Lisenby.
Thank you.
Item 11, consider all matters incident and related to the issuance and sale of City of Commerce, Texas Tax Note, Series 2023, including the adoption of an ordinance authorizing the issuance of such tax notes and approving all matters related thereto. Ms. Campbell, Finance Director.
Good afternoon. So we have some good news. Our tax note went out for bids this morning, and I will pass it on over to Jorge, and he will fill you in on how that went.
Welcome back, sir.
Mayor and Council, good afternoon. Thanks for listening to us today and for having us on the agenda. You may recall a couple of weeks ago we discussed a plan of finance to fund the public safety facilities in the amount of $400,000. Since then, you gave us a green light to go ahead and implement the plan. We worked closely with your city staff and your bond counsel, put together a term sheet. Remember, we didn't go out for an open market bond sale. We went out for bids from financial institutions, which is a fancy name for banks. We asked them to give us a bid at no later than 9 a.m. today. And so we received bids and looked at those bids closely. Bit of a refresher here. This is a private placement sale that we're going to be looking at. And we reached out to banks, to your depository, to statewide banks, and nationwide banks. And we told them the City of Commerce needs $400,000 to fund public safety facilities. They are rated highly. Although we're not getting a rating for this note, we did disclose what your rating is. And we told them it's a 7-year tax note. Please, any questions you may have, we're happy to answer those. They have to do their own credit due diligence. We answered any questions they had. And we received 3 bids today. Very close, very tight bids in the grand scheme of things. And what we did here was we listed these based on total cost to the city. You may see that Huntington Capital Bank had the lowest interest rate. However, they have the higher expenses as part of their proposal. And this is a common thing we see when we look at these private placements. They're going to ask us for some legal fees and some annual administration fees. When you factor all of that in, the bottom line for the city becomes a bit more expensive. So we look at the top 2 bidders, and it's Amity Bank and Alliance Bank. They're neck to neck, these 2. And what we looked at here is Alliance Bank has a bit of a higher legal fee, a minimal fee in the grand scheme of things, and they are 5%. Amity Bank's a 504%, but they don't have a legal fee. And they have in-house counsel. They're not going to charge a legal fee. The difference between these 2 bids is $900 over the life of the tax note. When everything is said and done, it's $900. We discussed internally with city staff, city manager, and your finance director. And Hilltop, we all came to the agreement that Alliance Bank is your local depository. They're showing community support here by bidding competitively. They're neck to neck with Amity. They're a strategic partner to you as your depository. And it is easier for this to be set up with your city staff for an administrative purpose as you're paying back the tax notes since you already work with them. So we'd like you to consider Alliance Bank, given all those circumstances in place, as the purchaser of this tax note. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. We think community support is important. Your city manager identified that, we identified that, and we'd like you to take a close look at that bid from Alliance Bank as the purchaser of this tax note. Should you move forward today, you'd be closing on September
13.
September 13th on this tax note, at which point you had the funds in the city's accounts immediately closed. This aligns with the budget that you just discussed. It fits within the proposed tax rate that you've been discussing. And very important to note that you do have flexibility thereafter to continue to fund your CIP, your capital improvement program, if you decide to do so in the future. We structured this so that it allows for that going forward, if that is something that we will tackle on next year with additional debt.
Are there any questions for Mr. Delgado? Thank you, sir. This will require a roll call vote from the council. So I will call your name for the vote. Councilman Henry.
Mayor, do you need a
Excuse
motion?
me. May I have a motion, please?
I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of the City of Commerce, Texas Tax Note Series 2023 and proving all other matters related thereto.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, this will require a roll call vote. I will call you by name for your vote. Councilman Henry.
Nay.
Councilman Muller.
Yay.
Councilman Thompson.
Yay.
Councilman Ayers.
Yay.
That is, motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Delgado. All right. Item 12, second reading. Discussion and possible action on an ordinance authorizing the appropriation of funds in an amount not to exceed $900,000 for the purpose of improvements at the Commerce Municipal Airport, providing for the city manager or his designee to execute necessary documentation and providing for an effective date. Mr. Lisenby, City Manager.
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to present this tonight. In previous meetings and in previous discussions regarding our strategic plan and strategic goals that the council set for staff, one of the things that we talked about is taking unused property that is held by the city and therefore is not on the tax roll and putting that property back on the market, allow private owners to purchase those properties, to put it back on the tax rolls and to increase taxable values for our community. One such property that was involved in that was approximately 118 acres. It's a tract of land out north of town by the city's airport that has historically been associated with the airport over the life of that asset. It was not actively used by the airport and didn't present any immediate benefits to the use or the expansion of the airport. And we knew that there were going to be property owners around there that were interested in potentially acquiring that property. So we went with a real estate broker, put that on the market, and immediately had an offer of $900,000, which is a market value for that land. And so council in a previous meeting took action to approve the sale of that land, and it is under contract and going through surveys and title policies and things like that. Closing on that sale is approaching. But we have proceeds from that sale that are going to be coming into the city. We won't get the full $900,000, but we're going to get almost all of that $900,000. And so in our last meeting, we discussed designating those funds to go towards the improvement of and the maintenance of our airport. The local airport that is owned by the city is a general aviation airport. It does not get annual funding from the FAA. We do get some funding and support from TxDOT Aviation, which will be talked about later in a agenda item. But there are a number of improvements and repairs that are needed at their airport for it to continue to be a viable asset for the community and a tool for economic development. And so we asked the council to appropriate those dollars and designate them as being used for the airport and be placed in the airport fund. And so y'all pass that up on first reading. This is the second reading of that ordinance, and staff continues to recommend approval of that ordinance.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lisenby? There being none, may I have a motion?
Make a motion that we adopt an ordinance authorizing appropriation funds in the amount not to exceed $900,000 for the purpose of improvements at the Commerce Municipal Airport on the second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 13, discussion and possible action on a resolution authorizing the participation of the City of Commerce, Texas Municipal Airport in the Texas Department of Transportation statewide pavement maintenance program, and authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute any necessary documentation related to the city's participation in the program. Mr. Harper, Assistant Director of Community Development.
Thank you. So those funds that we just approved right there, they'll be used as part of the pavement maintenance improvement plan or program. It has been 10 years since we have rehabbed the runway pavement out there at the airport. It's a 90-10 match, so we donate 50,000 and change. Donate, sorry. It's been a day, but our part of it is 50,000 and change to match that, and then we can rehab our airport runway.
Are there any questions from Mr. Harper? There being none, may I have a motion, please?
Okay, y'all down at that end. I've been doing it all night.
I make a motion that we approve the appropriation of funds, a resolution authorizing the participation of the City of Commerce and the airport in the Texas TxDOT statewide pavement maintenance program, and allowing the city manager to execute any necessary documentation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Harper. Item 14, first reading. Discuss. Okay, there being no questions, may I have a motion?
I move the approval of removing section 62-2 curfew hours for minors for the City of Commerce.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 15, first reading. Discussion and possible action on an ordinance granting to Farmers Electric Cooperative, a Texas corporation, and its successors the non-exclusive right, privilege, and franchise, including all necessary and required easements to conduct the business of acquiring, installing, constructing, maintaining, using, and operating an electric power utility system to the City of Commerce, Texas, and the inhabitants thereof in all areas of the City of Commerce, Texas, in which Farmers Electric has the right to serve, granting the rights to use and occupy present and future streets, avenues, alleys, roads, parkways, highways, sidewalks, right-of-way, easements, and other public grounds and places of the city for the construction, operation, and maintenance of an electric power utility system by the aforesaid electric cooperative, prescribing the conditions, restrictions, obligations, and limitations under which such franchise shall be exercised, providing for a fee or charge to be paid to the city for use of these streets, alleys, and other public ways, grounds, and places, providing that it shall be in lieu of other fees and charges, providing for savings, repealing, and severability clauses, providing for an effective date of this ordinance, and providing for the publication of the caption hereto.
Yay.
Thank you. Mr. Harper, Assistant Director of Community Development.
This ordinance is in response to the new subdivision out there at Bloomfield Homes is building. Farmers is the provider. A couple months ago, I reached out to Farmers and their attorney to draft an agreement. At that time, they sent it back to me, which immediately got forwarded to department heads for their parts of the ordinance. And then the city attorney sent it back to us. We kicked it back to them, and at 2:28 today, Farmers approved it, pending your approval. And this is in my department. It'll have a level playing field with Encore and Farmers for the whole city. So everybody they can't just call Farmers to have their electric turned on and it gets ripped off the wall. From the community development side of it.
From the utility side of it, this franchise agreement allows for and requires Farmers Electric, since they're going to be operating within our right-of-way, should we in the future need to move our utilities or widen or restructure a road, any of their infrastructure that is affected by that, they have to move their infrastructure and they have to carry the cost of moving their infrastructure. Many communities have to pay for the relocation of electrical poles. And so this protects the city into the future. Should we have to realign a street or make changes, they have to cover the cost of making those utility moves.
So this is just in the new subdivision area only with the new area, I mean, with the group or the area behind?
I may defer to our attorney tonight, but generally for a utility, you have a service area in which you somewhat have the exclusive right to serve. And on the eastern side of town, there's some of our city limits that's within the Farmers Electric service area rather than the Encore service area. And so Farmers is the provider of electricity in that area, but they didn't have a franchise agreement to operate within our city. And so they are the distribution company that has the rights to serve that area of town, and that's how this goes. So,
Okay, so they already had some areas before the Bloomfield.
yes.
So is that whole subdivision Farmers?
Yes. And they're actually putting in an entire substation to help provide for that area.
Any further questions for Mr. Harper or Mr. Lisenby? May I have a motion, please?
I move that we accept the first reading as stated by the mayor.
Second.
Coward.
Chicken.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Item 16, City Manager's Report. Mr. Lisenby.
I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Campbell for our finance update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this afternoon, I think we're gonna start with, property tax. So as of July 2023, as we know that we have received our new official tax levy, which is gonna sound very confusing, but the official tax levy has actually dropped 2.6%. Because it doesn't include, the $49 million that, you know, that were still on the table for legal judgments. So it actually decreased 2.6% from the original tax levy that they gave us at the end, that they gave us in July of last year. And so the new tax levy is 3.8 million, which originally was 3.9 million. And so our tax budget is actually, or our tax levy is actually less than what our tax budget is. So if we were going to look at just those numbers, then the revenue that we've received so far in July of 3.77 million is 97.8% of our original budget, but it's 98.5% of our new tax levy. It's very confusing. So it kind of depends on what number you're looking at. The number that the county looks at is that the county now is saying that, you know, we are reaching at the end of the fiscal year, they'll say that, oh, you've gotten 101% collections, is what they'll tell us. I don't know how that's possible, but we'll have reached 101% collections is what they'll end up telling us, and that's how they'll base our collections. And so, any questions on property tax, or can we just move into sales tax? Great. So for sales July of 2023, we have reached $1.29 million in sales tax revenue, which is 93.5% of our budget. We are on track to reach $1.4 million, which is what we got last year. I still think that we'll surpass that, but I still think that we'll surpass our budget. I think we'll do better than we did last year. We are doing rather well. So if we look at our overall top 10 categories, you'll see our retail trade is very similar to where it was the last few Julys. It did have a small dip, and so when I looked at it, the dip is actually because there was kind of a significant refund for one of our top vendors or retailers here. And it was because of a large overpayment that they had in a previous month. And I've been watching it, and I knew it was coming. Because there was just one month that was really high, and it just seemed weird. So it's kind of nice that I finally saw that refund come through, so now I know that everything's kind of balanced. If it hadn't been for that, then it would have been actually higher than last year. And I saw utilities was really high. And the reason why is because one of our vendors actually paid a month earlier than they typically do. And so next month, I'm kind of suspecting that we'll see it drop. But I think it's just because they paid a month early. But overall, we're doing really well. So when we look at the retail comparison month or year over year for July, it's almost identical. The split is almost identical. It's very weird. But July, the split on how all of the categories are splitting is very identical. And then not only that, but how our retail trade is, or how our online sales is, just that flat line in July. July is a very flat line for us. And we're just following that trend. So when we are looking at our accommodation and food services, last year the breakdown was 48% full service and 28% limited service. And all I'm going to say is that we continue to see this shift as new establishments move in and continue to do well during their first few months. That's all I'm going to say on that. But we still keep seeing that shift. Full service restaurants are still doing well. I'm still seeing an increase when I look at them individually. They're still doing well, still healthy. It's nice to see it. It's nice to see that bounding back. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Campbell?
I think it's important to point out that, and there's lots of ways to interpret data, and Ms. Jamie does an incredible job of pulling that data together. But sometimes we get questions about, well, if you keep bringing in these new restaurants, it's going to hurt the existing restaurants. And we're finding that not to be the case. That as we have new eating establishments come in, it's growing the economic pie. It's not redistributing the economic pie. And so that tells me that people are driving here to eat in our community that weren't driving here before. And so overall, we think it is still a total benefit and gain to our community as we add some of these new establishments.
And it's one more reason not to cook. That's my opinion.
Agreed. Ms. Molly?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager. I have a few upcoming events for you all, if I can multitask here. So as a reminder, the City of Commerce Parks and Recreation Department, along with Superior Health Plan and SCRIPT, which is our Senior Center Resources and Public Transit, have started back something that they were all doing prior to COVID, and then unfortunately they no longer had a place to meet. But they've recently started up in July their congregate meals and bingo for senior citizens. So this is for anyone over the age of 60. They meet every Monday and Wednesday at the First Baptist Church here in Commerce. So anyone is welcome to attend. They'll feed you lunch and they play bingo and win prizes. And they've, I think, increased participation to where they have 20-something seniors participating at this point.
And I will say for the record, if you're younger than 60 and you want to attend, you can. You can play bingo, but you cannot win prizes because apparently you have a competitive advantage if you're younger than 60. And so you can play bingo, but you don't get to win any of the cool things that are available to be won.
Or eat.
And you can pay for the food. You can eat, but you got to pay for it.
As a reminder, we have Commerce Farmers Market that goes on every Saturday from 8 a.m. to noon with local vendors right here in downtown at 1100 Bonham Alley. That will continue through the month of September. Youth soccer registration through Commerce Parks and Recreation in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Club is going on currently. You can register through this Friday. Friday is the last day to register, August 18th. So if you haven't signed the kiddos up, you should do so. They have leagues 4 and under, 7 and under, 10 and under, all the way up to 14 and under leagues. We wanted to touch base with you all regarding mosquito spraying. We sprayed, I believe it was last week was normal spraying, and we spray every other week through the months of May all the way through September. We're spraying this week, which was not initially scheduled. We've had 3 cases where we returned West Nile positive mosquitoes. So your emergency management team, which as a reminder is myself, Chief Bassham, and Chief Belitz, is working with your public works team who does the mosquito spraying to look at other alternatives. It's been 2, no more than 3 mosquitoes that tested positive, but nonetheless we've increased spraying. And depending on the results in the coming weeks, we may do some more spraying and look at other chemicals as well. But we wanted everyone to be aware of that. So this week, not on the calendar, but we're pushing out notifications, spraying Monday through Thursday, the usual A, B, C, D sections. It'll start at 7 o'clock. So we advise that you go inside if you can, bring pet bowls inside. Don't have kiddos running around outside if you can help it. Bring pets inside, that sort of thing. As a reminder, your normal mosquito spraying schedule, when they're not testing positive and it's just normal spraying, we have plenty of copies of that schedule available here at City Hall. And then the schedule is also being pushed out to social media, and it's also available on our website at commercetx.org, and we'll continue spraying through September. Couple final things. Our animal shelter is currently acting under limited capacity. As many of you know, there's lots of construction going on out there. I believe they've had to take up the outdoor cages for any of the animals. So those are gone. They've got most of the pets inside. It's not an ideal environment anyways for pets. So if you ever considered fostering, now's a great time to consider fostering one of our animals. And they're operating by appointment only and under limited capacity due to the construction at this time. Lastly, I don't have this on here, but Chief Bassham just reminded me, today a burn ban was issued for Hunt County. So there is a burn ban in effect for Hunt County. And I believe that's all I have.
I want to add regarding the operation of our splash park that we continue to operate under regular hours through the month of August. We know that school has started, but we will continue to operate under regular hours throughout this month. We will open on Monday of Labor Day. Typically, we're closed on Mondays, but the splash park will be open on Monday of Labor Day. And then for the month of September, we'll be opened on a weekend-only schedule. We'll do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that the splash park will be open and available. And then in October, we will close for the season. So there's still time to go out and get wet and escape the heat should you want to. Couple of project updates.
Hang on just
yes.
1 minute. Can we have Chief Felix give us a National Night Out update or talk to us about it?
Please come to the podium, Chief Belitz.
National Night Out, October 3rd, 5 o'clock till about 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Just briefly, last year we had about 500 people attend. We're projecting anywhere 600 to 700 this year. Over the past few years, we've seen our numbers grow and grow and grow. We've been planning National Night Out this year since last year. So lessons learned from last year, we actually picked up about this time last year and started planning for this year. We're doing things a lot differently. I don't want to give everything away,
her assistance to reach out to other organizations in the community and just kind of spiderweb a network to get everybody involved that we possibly can. We're having a food drive. We have 3 organizations in town that are involved that are going to be there accepting donated foods. I can't give it away. I want to, but I can't. It's just going to be really good.
Is it at the park again?
Yes, at Centennial Park, yes. I would say Catherine Perlis, our part-time employee who works with Chris and I in planning these events. Something I wanted to do last year, we didn't, just short on time. She and I have talked about it. It's on my heart, so I will speak of it now. Maybe put it on your hearts and figure out a way to make this happen. There's a lot of families, a lot of kids who won't have transportation to make it to this National Night Out. Last year, I wanted to reach out to churches to see if we could all get together, find a solution to bring people to National Night Out who don't have transportation and get them back home safely. I don't know exactly how that can work, but I'm open for suggestions. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you. A couple of project updates. As mentioned in a previous item, in June, we started construction of installing a new transmission line to cross the Silver River. That project was a horizontal directional drilling. It was a boring process. Yes, it was boring because it wasn't exciting to watch, and it was boring because you're drilling a hole under the ground. But the new water line actually goes 27 feet below the bottom of the current riverbed. And so when the existing line was installed 70 years ago, that line was not exposed. Fast forward to last summer when we had the water leak, that line was actually exposed to the air. And so it had been placed in service 70 years ago, and over that time, erosion exposed the pipe. The way we've installed it now, I don't believe 70 years from now the river is going to be 27 feet deeper than it is today, but all things are possible. That project has completed, and we were worried in advance because there is a moment in time where they have to disconnect the old line and connect it to the new line, and that process of reconnecting lines is fraught with opportunities for extra work. Transition went very smoothly. For the most part, the community didn't even know that there was a transition that happened. We were able to shut the water plant down and do some maintenance that we haven't been able to do for years because the bypass was in place and allowed us to operate the way water systems are supposed to operate. And so that project is completed, and water is now flowing through that new river crossing that is much safer and has much more sustainability for the long term of our community. So we're very happy to have that project completed. This past week, we had a bid opening for 4 street reconstruction projects. We were excited to put the first street reconstruction that this community's seen in a number of years, and we received 0 bids from any contractors for those projects, which was disheartening. And so we went out and reached out to the companies that we knew had the plans and were looking to submit bids. And what we found out is that TxDOT was also opening bids for a major block of projects at the same time. And so they were all bidding on TxDOT projects and not on ours. So we're going to repackage, rebid it, and we've got a number of contractors that expressed interest in doing the work. We just happened to open bids at the same time as TxDOT, and TxDOT gets their attention. Finally, the renovation to the library, that project is currently under bid and out on the street. This Thursday, we have a pre-bid meeting in which we invite contractors that are interested in this work to come walk through the library, look at the project, allow us to answer questions. Usually at a pre-bid, you have a pretty good idea of what contractors are serious. And so we directly contacted 6 different contractors that do work in this region, many of whom have reached back out and expressed interest in the project. So we'll do a pre-bid walkthrough this week, and then we'll open bids on August the 31st. The intent is to bring a recommendation to council in our September regular meeting so that we can get the library renovation project up and running. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lisenby?
Will this delay, like starting the Washington Street construction necessarily?
Yes, since we didn't get any bids, there's no contract to award, and so it's probably going to add 45 days to the project to go back, rebid, allow time for contractors to put their stuff together. It'll probably add 45 days.
Council, we do have need to move into recess tonight. So at this time, may I have a motion to recess into executive session?
So move.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. 7:28, we are recessed into executive session.
I was just gonna call him Calais, and then I thought, no, he's got a title now. I need to make sure he's got his title.
Okay, we are all back. May I have a motion to reconvene?
I move that we reconvene.
I second.
So, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. So at 8:25, we are reconvened. There being no other new business as a result of our executive session tonight, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. So at 8:25, we are adjourned.